The rain fell on occupied earth with the same indifferent rhythm it had always kept, drumming against the converted spires of what was once called Chicago. Prelate Kelthanes of the Ushtari Collective stood at the observation window of the administrative citadel, his elongated fingers pressed together beneath his chin, mandibles twitching in a pattern his aides recognized as profound boredom. 15 years. 15 cycles since the armadas of the collective had swept through the Sol system, their plasma lances cutting through humanity's patchwork defenses with surgical precision. The conquest had been textbook: isolate the homeworld, neutralize orbital platforms, deploy atmospheric suppressants, accept surrender. Standard pacification protocol. What was left of humanity now worked in the fabrication plants, the agricultural domes, the data processing centers. They were compliant, tired, a species that had fought with unexpected ferocity but ultimately crumbled under the weight of superior technology and numbers. Kelthanes turned from the window as his communication officer, a young Ushtari named Velix, entered the chamber with an expression of controlled agitation. Prelate, a visitor has arrived from the core worlds. He demands an audience. Demands? Kelthanes' mandibles clicked in irritation. Who would be so bold in my jurisdiction? Velix hesitated. Subcommander Torvith Prelate retired. He was part of the initial invasion fleet. His credentials are considerable. The name stirred something in Kelthanes' memory. Torvith, the hero of the Threxian campaign, the strategist who had broken the Kel Dominion's defensive grid at Korvath Nebula, a genuine warrior, not a bureaucrat playing governor. Send him in. Torvith entered with the stiff gait of someone who had never quite adjusted to civilian movement. His carapace bore the faded scars of plasma burns, and one of his 4 eyes was clouded with the milky film of old injury. He carried no weapons, but his posture radiated the kind of coiled tension that made junior officers step back involuntarily. Prelate, Torvith said, offering the minimal acknowledgement protocol. I have traveled 17 light-years to stand on this world. A pilgrimage? Kelthanes asked, genuinely puzzled. Earth offers little to the tourist. The weather is aggressive, the native cuisine is corrosive to our biology, and the local population has been thoroughly pacified. Torvith's remaining eyes fixed on the prelate with an intensity that bordered on disturbing. I wish to visit a location, one that should be in your records. Name it. The place the humans called Promise Gate. Kelthanes accessed his neural data link and ran the query. Nothing. He ran it again with broader parameters. Still nothing. No facility, monument, or geographic location registered under that designation anywhere in the occupation database. There is no such place, Kelthanes said. Your information is flawed. Torvith's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile or a threat display. Oh, it exists. I know because I was there when they made the promise. My entire task force was there. We laughed at them, Prelate. Every last one of us laughed. The rain intensified against the window, and somewhere in the distance, a low roll of thunder echoed across the conquered skyline. Tell me, Kelthanes said quietly, what exactly did you laugh at? Torvith accepted a cup of processed nutrient broth and settled into the memory. His voice carried the weight of 15 years of reflection, each word placed with the precision of someone who had replayed the events countless times. The invasion was nearly complete. Earth's orbital defenses had collapsed within the first 6 hours. Their surface-to-space batteries fell 2 hours after that. By the end of the first day, their organized military resistance had been reduced to scattered pockets of futility. Kelthanes nodded. He had read the after-action reports, standard conquest. On the 3rd day, Torvith continued, my task force was assigned to mop up operations in the outer system. We were hunting civilian evacuation vessels, transports trying to slip past our blockade with refugees, cultural artifacts, that sort of thing. Low priority, but the high command wanted no loose ends. His clouded eye seemed to pulse with inner light as he spoke. We detected a convoy of 12 civilian haulers escorted by a single military vessel. The warship was a Defender-class cruiser, the Guardian's Oath, damaged, venting atmosphere, running on auxiliary power. It had taken multiple hits clearing a path for its charges, and it was held together by structural prayers. Torvith paused to drink, his grip on the cup tightening. We surrounded them near the orbit of the gas giant you call Jupiter. My flagship, 3 destroyers, 16 interceptors. They had no escape vector, no reinforcements coming, no hope. And they surrendered, Kelthanes asked, though he already sensed the answer would not be so simple. No, Torvith set down the cup. The captain of the Guardian's Oath opened a broadcast channel, full audio and visual. We saw her on the bridge, Prelate. Her uniform was scorched, blood on her face. Half her bridge crew were dead at their stations, but she stood straight as a blade and looked directly into the camera. The old warrior's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She said, "Our registration is now changed. We are the foundation of Promise Gate. All hostile forces are advised to reevaluate their approach." Then she cut the transmission. Kelthanes waited for more. When none came, he spread his hands in confusion. "That's it, a semantic declaration." "That is what we thought." Torvith's mandibles clicked a complex rhythm of remembered emotion. "We laughed, Prelate. My entire bridge crew laughed. A crippled ship, outnumbered, outgunned, changing its name as if words could alter reality. We assumed it was some human superstition, a death ritual perhaps. We opened fire." The thunder outside had grown closer. The Guardian's Oath didn't return fire. It didn't attempt to evade. It simply positioned itself between our weapons and the civilian convoy. Our first salvo struck its forward section. The second breached its reactor housing. The third broke it in half. It took 17 direct hits before the aft section finally detonated. And the civilians escaped, every single one of them. They jumped to slipspace while the Guardian's Oath absorbed our full arsenal. The cruiser gave them exactly enough time. Torvith rose from his seat and walked to the window, staring at the rain-soaked human city below. I filed my report. The High Command logged it as a minor engagement, a footnote, but I never forgot what the human captain said. I spent 15 years trying to understand it. Then, 3 cycles ago, a captured human resistance member on Proxima Colony said something during interrogation that made everything fall into place. His reflection in the glass was gaunt and hollow. He said, "The gate still stands," and then he smiled. Kelthanes authorized the expedition within the hour. The search parameters had been expanded beyond official registries to include pre-conquest human military archives, captured resistance databases, and deep geological survey scans. What emerged was a pattern that occupation intelligence had either missed or dismissed as irrelevant. A facility had been constructed beneath a decommissioned naval installation on the coast of what was once called Maine. The location was unremarkable, a rocky peninsula battered by the North Atlantic, a landscape of granite and stubborn pine. Pre-invasion satellite imagery showed vehicle traffic entering and leaving the site for nearly 2 years before the Ashtari arrived, always at night, always under heavy cloud cover. What was built there? Kelthanes asked as their transport descended through the gray ceiling of clouds. Velix scrolled through the fragmentary data. Unknown. The humans removed it from their own civilian oversight systems. Whatever it was classified at the highest levels of their military command. "Black budget construction," Torvith muttered. "Every species has them. Secret weapons, continuity shelters, doomsday contingencies." The transport set down on a windswept landing pad that had been swallowed by weeds and salt spray. The naval installation above ground was a ruin, crushed buildings, rusted equipment, the detritus of a war that had ended before the defenders could mount a meaningful resistance. A squad of Ashtari security troops fanned out, their sensor arrays scanning for threats both physical and technological. What they found was a sealed entrance carved into the granite bedrock itself, hidden beneath a collapsed warehouse. The bulkhead was massive, circular, and constructed of a composite material that resisted immediate identification. Etched into its surface in human script were words that had been burned into the metal with what appeared to be a plasma torch. "You are at the threshold." "They carved it by hand," Kelthanes observed. "Not machined, not printed. Someone stood here and marked this door with deliberate intent." Torvith stepped forward and pressed a gloved hand against the cold metal. "How do we open it?" The answer came with unexpected speed. A sensor embedded in the bulkhead detected the touch and activated. Lights flickered along the edges of the door, warm, golden lights that pulsed in a slow, rhythmic pattern reminiscent of breathing. A voice emerged from hidden speakers, synthesized but unmistakably human in cadence. "Identity confirmation required. State your purpose." Kelthanes gestured for his troops to hold position. "We are representatives of the Ashtari Collective. This facility falls under our administrative jurisdiction. Open." Jurisdiction not recognized. This installation operates under Promise Protocol, authorized by the United Nations of Earth Security Council Resolution 4109, dated 4 years prior to collective invasion. External authority is not valid at this threshold. Torvith's mandibles clicked with grim satisfaction. There it is, the promise. "What happens if we force entry?" Kelthanes asked. "Forced entry will be interpreted as hostile action. The promise will be considered compromised. Appropriate measures will be enacted." "What measures?" The AI paused, an almost theatrical hesitation, as if weighing how much to reveal. "The gate does not open outward, Ashtari prelate. It opens inward, and what it holds is not for you. It is for the inheritors. If you breach this seal, you will become the inheritors by default. Do you wish to inherit the promise?" The Ashtari engineering team worked for 6 hours, probing the bulkhead with every scanning technology at their disposal. The results were as baffling as they were unsettling. The facility beneath the granite was not a bunker, not a weapons cache, not a continuity of government shelter. It was a single massive chamber wrapped in a Faraday shell that blocked all conventional scanning. The only detectable emissions were a low-frequency quantum carrier, wave pulsing through a network of relays buried across the entire planetary surface. "What are we looking at?" Kelthanes demanded. His chief engineer, a methodical Ashtari named Skarath, displayed the data on a holographic overlay. "The carrier wave is piggybacking on Earth's natural magnetic field. The humans use their existing electrical infrastructure as amplifier nodes, power grids, telecommunications towers, even undersea cables. We never dismantled these systems because we assessed them as primitive and benign. They're using our own occupation infrastructure against us." "Not against us exactly. The signal isn't offensive. It's passive, a constant broadcast that requires no maintenance and draws minimal power. It has been running continuously for 15 years, and we never noticed it because it's indistinguishable from background noise unless you know exactly what to look for." Torvith stared at the pulsing waveform on the display. "What is it broadcasting?" Skarath hesitated. "Coordinates, a dimensional lock on a specific slipspace trajectory. The signal is maintaining a fixed anchor on the convoy that escaped Jupiter 15 years ago. Wherever those civilian ships went, this facility has been holding a beacon for their return." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the equipment and the distant crash of waves against the rocky shore above. Kelthanes felt something cold settle in his thorax. A navigation beacon. This entire facility, this Promise Gate, is nothing more than a lighthouse for refugees who fled before the occupation. That is what we initially concluded, Scareth said, until we analyzed the power signature. The beacon is not merely passive, Prelate. It is a quantum entanglement lock. The convoy ships are bound to this facility at the subatomic level. If the lock is broken, if we shut it down, if we damage it, if the facility is destroyed, the entanglement collapses. And then what? Scareth's mandibles flattened against his face in an expression of profound unease. We don't know. The AI refers to it as the inheritance. But the energy stored in this facility's capacitors is enough to trigger an event of planetary scale. Kelthanes turned to Torvith. You said the human resistance member smiled when he mentioned this. Why would a beacon for refugee ships make him smile? Torvith's clouded eye seemed to gleam. Because we've been occupying a world that isn't just holding a door open, Prelate. It's holding a gun to its own head, and our hand is on the trigger. The AI's voice returned, calm and measured. You are beginning to understand. The Promised Gate was never about escape. It was about ensuring that whoever took Earth would never truly possess it. The convoy carries more than refugees, Ashtari. It carries seeds, and seeds require soil. If the gate falls, the soil burns. You will hold ashes and nothing more. Kelthanes ordered the engineering team to find a way to disable the quantum lock without triggering the failsafe. Scareth's expression told him the answer before the words came. The system is designed with elegant simplicity, Prelate. The lock can only be disengaged under one condition. The biosphere must register as unoccupied by hostile forces. The AI's definition of hostile forces is any non-human military or administrative presence. So we cannot disarm it while we occupy the planet. Correct. And if we attempt to destroy it, the entanglement collapse will trigger the contingency. The stored energy will be released through the same amplifier network carrying the beacon. Every power grid, every telecommunications relay, every piece of infrastructure we commandeered becomes a conduit for destruction. Torvith made a sound that might have been admiration. They built a dead man's switch into the entire planet. 15 years ago, while we were laughing at their captain's declaration, they had already prepared for defeat. The AI interrupted. Clarification. The captain of the Guardian's Oath was not making a declaration of defiance. She was issuing a legal notice of registration change under the Promise Protocol. The vessel ceased to be a warship and became the legal foundation of a sovereign diplomatic installation. By firing upon a diplomatic vessel protecting civilian refugees, the Ashtari Collective committed an act that, under 7 different interstellar conventions, constitutes a breach of the conventions of protected flight. Kelthanes stared at the speaker. This is about legal precedent. This is about leverage. The gate has recorded every moment of the occupation, every act of suppression, every relocation, every execution. This data is entangled with the convoy. If the convoy returns, it returns with evidence. If the gate is destroyed, the evidence is transmitted via quantum burst to every neutral system within slipspace range. You cannot win, Prelate. You can only choose what you lose. The weight of 15 years of occupation settled onto Kelthanes' shoulders like a physical burden. He had been administering a conquered world, patting himself on the thorax for maintaining order and productivity. He had never once considered that the conquered had been administering him right back, gathering evidence, maintaining a beacon, waiting. The human resistance hadn't been trying to overthrow the occupation. They had been protecting the secret, buying time, keeping the Ashtari comfortable and complacent while the gate hummed beneath their feet and the evidence stacked higher with every passing year. How many of them know? Kelthanes asked quietly. How many humans are aware of this facility? The knowledge was compartmentalized. The original builders are deceased. The resistance members who maintain the amplifier network do not know the full scope of the operation. Only the gate knows the totality of the promise. That was by design. You cannot extract what is not held in any single mind. Torvith turned to face the prelate, and for the first time, Kelthanes saw something in the old warrior's expression that he had never expected to witness in a hero of the collective. Fear. We have to tell High Command, Torvith said. We have to tell them that Earth is not a colony. It is a hostage situation, and we are the hostages. The emergency session of the Ashtari Occupation Council convened via encrypted hololink, the faces of 17 senior administrators flickering in the dim light of the gate's control chamber. Kelthanes had insisted on briefing them from the facility itself, wanting the weight of the situation to settle into their minds through direct exposure. Their reactions followed a predictable arc: disbelief, outrage, denial, and finally the cold silence of strategic recalculation. Grand Administrator Veshtorn's image leaned forward, her aged features sharp with barely contained fury. You are telling us that a single human cruiser, dying and outgunned, managed to saddle the entire collective with a diplomatic and military liability that we cannot escape without catastrophic consequences. That is precisely what I am telling you, Kelthanes replied. The Guardian's oath was never trying to win the engagement. It was executing a legal maneuver that our tactical systems were not programmed to recognize. We thought we were destroying a warship. We were actually creating a witness. And the convoy? Unknown. The quantum lock confirms the entanglement remains stable, which means the ships are intact somewhere beyond our sensor range. They have had 15 years to prepare, Grand Administrator. 15 years to build, to gather allies, to plan their return. And when they return, they will find the gate still standing, the evidence still intact, and the collective's hands still wrapped around a trigger that destroys our own legal and moral standing across the entire galaxy. Veshtorn's image flickered with barely suppressed emotion. What do you recommend? Torvith stepped forward. Immediate diplomatic overtures. We must find a way to contact the convoy and negotiate terms for mutual disengagement. The gate's AI has made it clear that violence will not solve this. Only agreement can release the lock without triggering the failsafe. Negotiate with a species we conquered. One of the junior administrators scoffed. That sets a precedent that will echo through every occupied system in collective space. The precedent has already been set, Kelthanes said flatly. By the humans. 15 years ago, we just didn't notice. The argument continued for hours, cycling through variations of the same impossible calculus. The occupation of Earth had been a cornerstone of collective expansion policy, a demonstration of military superiority that had cowed a dozen other potential resistance movements. To negotiate with the humans now would be to admit that the cornerstone was cracked. But the alternative was worse, much worse. Skarath, who had been monitoring the facility's systems throughout the debate, suddenly stiffened. Prelate, the quantum lock's frequency is shifting. Every head turned toward the engineering display. The steady pulse that had been the gate's heartbeat for 15 years was accelerating, the waveform compressing into a tighter oscillation. What does that mean? Kelthanes demanded. The AI answered before Skarath could speak. The convoy has activated its return sequence. The dimensional anchor is being pulled from their end. They are coming home. Estimated arrival, 47 hours. The silence that fell over the chamber was absolute. Torvith's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely audible. We laughed at them. We laughed at a dying ship making a promise, and now that promise is coming back to collect. The rain had stopped above ground. In the darkness beneath the granite, the gate's lights pulsed with steady, patient certainty, counting down to an arrival that would change everything. The 47 hours passed with excruciating slowness. Kelthanes had ordered the occupation forces to stand down from all active patrols. The human population, sensing a shift in the invisible calculus of power, had emerged from their homes and workplaces to gather in the streets, their faces turned toward the sky. Word had spread through channels the Ashtari could not trace. A whisper, a a rumor, a hope rekindled. Something was coming. The gate's control chamber had been transformed into a command post, Ashtari technicians working alongside human collaborators who had been granted emergency clearance. The irony was not lost on Kelthanes. The occupation government now depended on the very infrastructure it had dismissed as primitive to manage a crisis it had never seen coming. Torvith stood at the observation window of the surface installation, watching the ocean crash against the rocks below. The sky was clear for the first time in days, the stars sharp and cold overhead. "I keep thinking about the captain," he said as Kelthanes joined him. "The one who changed her ship's registration. I never learned her name." "Does it matter?" "I think it does. She knew she was going to die. She knew her crew was going to die. But she also knew that her death would serve a purpose beyond the immediate battle. She was not fighting to win. She was fighting to set a trap that would not spring for years, perhaps decades." Kelthanes followed his gaze to the stars, and we walked right into it. "We conquered them with fire and steel. They conquered us with patience and law. Which of those do you think lasts longer, prelate?" The answer came not in words but in light. A ripple opened in the fabric of space above the Atlantic, a slip-space aperture that expanded with geometric precision. Ships began to emerge, not warships, not invasion craft, but vessels of a design no Ashtari intelligence database could identify. They were elegant, powerful, and utterly alien to both human and collective engineering. The convoy had not simply hidden for 15 years. It had found allies. A transmission cut through every frequency, overriding occupation control protocols with an authority that could not be challenged. The voice was human, clear and steady. "This is the vessel New Horizon, flagship of the Promise Convoy Return Fleet. We are transmitting under the authority of the United Nations Continuity Council, recognized by the allied worlds of the Cygnus Arm. To the occupying forces of the Ashtari Collective, you hold our home. You hold our gate. You hold the evidence of your own crimes. We offer you one opportunity to negotiate a peaceful withdrawal. This offer expires in 24 standard hours. We strongly suggest you use them wisely." Kelthanes closed his eyes. When he opened them again, Torvith was watching him with an expression that contained both sorrow and something that might have been respect. "They kept their promise," the old warrior said. "They guarded Earth, not with guns, not with fleets, not with desperate last stands. They guarded it with a legal trap that turned our entire occupation into a confession." The human crowds in the streets below were cheering now, a sound that rose like the ocean itself, wave after wave of voices that had been silent for 15 years and were silent no longer. Kelthanes straightened his uniform and began composing his recommendation to the collective high command. It would be the hardest message he had ever written, and the simplest. Withdraw, negotiate, leave. The Promise Gate had stood unseen beneath their feet for the entirety of the occupation, humming its quiet defiance into the bones of the planet. And now, at last, the door it had held open was swinging wide. What came through would not be an invasion. It would be a reckoning. And somewhere in the deep of space, the soul of a dead captain who had changed her ship's registration with her final breath could finally rest, knowing that her promise had been kept.